now cross your fingers for sound.
Hi, my name is Cara, and I'm an interpretive ranger here at Katmai National Park and Preserve. We're currently standing here on the beach, which is one of my favorite places because it's where a lot of our visitors see their very first bear. The bears like to hang out here, even with all the planes coming in and the boats landing and all the people around. And a major part of my job is helping people manage those interactions with the bears so that both bears and people have a great time here at the park.
All right, so a couple reasons I just showed you that. One, you see what I actually look like when I'm on duty. Two, you see the number of bugs around me and how I have to pretend they're not there. And also, I can check my sound because there's videos that are far more interesting than that one that are coming up. And I want to know right at the beginning that they're going to work. So, I do work in Katmai National Park. And I have a slide coming up that'll show you where that is, but it's not great. So I also have this gigantic map. And I would love for you guys, when you have a chance, to walk by and take a look at it. I have a huge park that I work in, and there are very few rangers that work this park. So in addition to being an interp ranger, which is basically like a naturalist, but thrown out into the middle of nowhere, I'm also part of the search and rescue team. I have about 6,000 square miles. There's about 4 of us. So please don't get lost in my park. And the big draw for a lot of people coming to Katmai is the bears. We have cameras up so you can watch them if you can't actually get there. And the 2 things that this park is best known for is that iconic photo of the bear catching a salmon up on top of the lip of the waterfall. Anybody seen that one? Mm-hmm. All right. And anybody seen the movie Grizzly Man? Mm-hmm. That is also my park. Please don't pet the bears. All right. So this is something that you will almost inevitably see at the park. This is the huge draw that everybody's coming from. This is an Alaskan brown bear. Now some of you may be wondering what the difference is between a grizzly bear and a brown bear. A grizzly bear is on the inside of an imaginary line 100 miles from the coast. And a brown bear is on the outside of that imaginary line from the coast. And if they cross over that line, they switch from one to the other. Now you know. All right, so this is my park. So if you're looking at Alaska, because some of you are familiar, some of you are not so much, I'm down at that elephant part of the trunk. The trunk part of the elephant. That's what I meant to say. Thank you. And my park is not accessible by road. You have to either fly or boat in. And there's a couple issues with that. First of all, weather dependent. If the weather's not great, you can't fly or boat in. The other thing is, when you land, sometimes we have greeters on the beach. It's hard to see because they blend in, but that's a bear, and that's a bear, and that's a bear. I think there's actually another one there too. So there may be bears on the beach. You could actually be trapped for quite a while. In fact, we call that a bear jam instead of a traffic jam. It's much more interesting, and it's a much better excuse when you're late for work than a regular traffic jam. They'll go after the boats too, so sometimes even if you make it to shore, you can't get out of the boat. And they will swim out to greet you, which is excellent. And sometimes they will pull your airplane apart. So everybody comes in on float planes. Sometimes the bears like to pull the cords out of the floats. Part of my job is to discourage the bears from doing that. So in addition to the commute into the park, sometimes just walking in the park is a little treacherous. This is actually my walk home from work. So I'm on the ground by myself. And you turn a corner, and there's bears. Now, most people know that brown bears are generally solitary bears. However, in Katmai, we have a special situation where we have a very concentrated food source, and they have a tendency to be a little more tolerant of bears and of people, which works out well for me since I have to walk around there. But what you're looking at here is a female bear with her 3 monster cubs, and some extra teenage bears that she has picked up along the way for no reason except to delay me from getting home. This is another walk home, and they were napping on the side of the road. And you can be stuck from anywhere from 5 minutes to 3 hours waiting for those bears to move. Because despite what a lot of people think, the rangers are not going to move the bears just because you want to get somewhere. For one thing, it's not fair. This is their home. For another thing, those are bears. Another walk home. A lot of times when you are walking along the road, the bears are trying to use that road too, because just like people, bears like to use the path of least resistance. So the one and only road in the park is a highway for bears. So if you're walking and the bears come towards you, your best bet is to get out of their way. And so I spend a good portion of my time getting out of the way and trying to encourage other people to also get out of the way. And this looks terrifying because that bear is definitely running towards me. But this is actually a pretty low-key situation because you've got a mother bear, her 2 cubs, that's pretty high risk. But this bear has no interest in me because that's not her cub. And so she's going to move him quite a bit away from me because she's not a fan of him. So I'm not in danger at this point, except for maybe Mom if she's in a bad mood. All right, this is actually me trying to walk to work, or to lunch after work. And these guys were in my way for about a full hour. That's how long it took me to walk half a mile to where I could get to my food. So this is what it's like to work in a bear park. Everywhere you go, there's bears. Sometimes it's not bears though, there's other cool things to look at. This is again my walk. So far all we've done is walk through the park. These are spruce grouse. And you have a little chick and an adult, and they're very cool looking, not that bright. All right, this is where I live, in the park. So these are the ranger cabins, and there's usually about 2 of us to a cabin, and sometimes we have visitors. So this also gives you a good idea of the size of the bears that we're talking about. In Katmai, we have not only the densest population of brown bears anywhere in the world, we also have the largest, which is quite fun. All right, so I was told to tell you guys about what it's like to live and work in a remote Alaskan park, and so part of that is things like getting your food and groceries and how traveling is, and I don't have any fun pictures of groceries, so instead you can look at one of my favorite bears. This is 901, and she is absolutely feeling herself in the sunshine there. So to give you an idea of what it's like to live in a remote park, once we are dropped off, we're pretty much there. We're not getting out of this park. There are no grocery stores in this park at all. So our groceries are brought in by either plane or by boat about every week or other week. Most of them are ordered over the mail, so my groceries are mailed to me. Or if you're very lucky, someone is going out to the nearby, not quite city, it's a tiny little town of King Salmon, and you can send them to the grocery store with whatever money you have, because park rangers aren't paid a whole lot, and they will buy you groceries. To give you some idea of what that's like, here, half gallon of ice cream, how much would that cost you? $4? Yeah. It's going to cost you about 13, 15 bucks. Let's see. Yeah, a carton of eggs, how much is that going to run you? You're looking at least $8 for a carton of eggs. Gallon of milk. It's going to be about 10 if you're lucky. And you have to get there the day the grocery store is restocked, or you're not getting any dairy or eggs because that's gone. My favorite thing, because I have a weakness for cheese and cannot do without it, 2-pound block of just regular cheddar cheese, how much would that cost you here? 18 to 20 bucks. That is a real luxury. So groceries are difficult. And most of what you get, since it is coming over the mail, or if someone's going out, they may not be coming back for a week or 2, has to be shelf stable. We have terrible diets. So, just so you know, you get really cool views and garbage diets, okay? Cool. All right, but there are other things to do in the park. There's lots of fun things, whether you are a ranger or a visitor. We have lots of hiking. This is in the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. I give a tour on this. We have to do a 4.5-mile hike with our visitors. It takes all day because there's a 2-hour drive to get 26 miles before you even get to the hike. And this is what you're looking at with the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. You will notice there appear to be quite a few less than 10,000 of the smokes in this valley. And that is because they're not there anymore. And if you'd like to hear more about that later, I can certainly tell you why. All right. This is another cool thing you might see. This is actually natural color. Nobody spray painted that, although I have told visitors that that's what our maintenance team does. And that's because rangers get bored. So these are actually colored pumice stones from the largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century, which happened in my park. All right, and what you're looking at here is one of the rivers and about 75 feet of ash. And right at the base of that eruption, the ash is 750 feet deep. So think 10 times that amount of ash and we're getting kind of close. All right? Okay, cool. This is what the rest of the park looks like, the part that hasn't been devastated by volcano. It's quite beautiful, but you will notice that we have another float plane in the view, and that's because almost everywhere to get in this park, you're gonna fly. All right, there's also camping, lots of camping to do, which is great fun. But again, you have to remember that you are camping in bear country, so things are a little different. We also do have some places you can stay. We have this cabin that you can rent. And we also have a campground that you can go to and a lodge that if you have enough money, you can go there as well. And most of them are either hard-sided buildings or are electrified. Now, electric fences are fun because they are bear deterrents, not bear-proof. And we have to make that distinction very clear because frequently the rangers get called in because the bears are inside the fence and not outside where they're supposed to be, and we have to, again, encourage them to leave. All right, now when you're camping, you have to be aware of what's around you. These are kind of difficult to see, but this is right next to the tent that I had just set up, and that is a bear print. And what you're looking at, ooh, I have a little pointer thing if I can get it to work. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, so this is my hand, not that great. And here is the base of the foot, here are the toes, and here are the claw marks. And that is a bear print right next to my campsite, which made me a little nervous. This is, if you can see it here, anybody guess? Close, caribou. A little too small for a moose, it would be a very tiny moose, but it's a good sized caribou. Which means if you have caribou, you probably have wolves. There we go. All right, this is a wolf print. A pretty decent one. We have quite a few of them around, and that's quite fun. But when you go camping in my park, again, as a member of the search and rescue team, I beg of you, please come prepared and know what's around you, because it's more search and recovery than search and rescue if you're tangling with a bear. All right. We also have to teach a lot of things when we send people out camping. We have to teach them how to set up their camps properly to, again, deter bears. Basically, everything we do in this park is because there's bears there, and we need to tell people how to deal with that. But we also have to deal with other safety issues, such as river crossings. It may surprise you to know that most of the accidents that happen in my bear-filled park have nothing to do with bears. It has to do with hypothermia or falls. And part of that is river crossings. Now, this river is a glacial-fed river, which means it is very cold. It is also filled with ash and silt, which means you cannot see the bottom. Have any of you done any sort of river crossings before? Yeah? Any idea how you do it as safely as possible? Hiking poles, they're great fun. So this is the one thing I'm going to teach you today, because apparently I have to teach you something for this to be educational, and that is going to be how to cross a river as safely as possible, especially if you're on your own. You shouldn't do it if you're on your own, but if you are, hiking pole, and use it to tap, 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 and if it collapses underneath you, don't step there, okay? All right. The other thing to note is that if you have a backpack on, if you leave it all strapped in and you fall, that's going to drag you with it. It is much better to lose your backpack than lose all of you, all right? So unstrap your bag, tap, tap, tap as you go, and if it doesn't look like it's going to be a good crossing, go back. I would much rather have you chicken out than try to go through with it. At least if you chicken out, you'll have a great story later. All right. We also do river walking. This is me off duty. And part of the problem with river walking is that our rivers are full of bears, because it turns out bears are aquatic as well. So, in this second picture here, we're actually trapped. There's bears in the way and we can't get to shore. And that's a thing that might happen, so in Katmai you always have to have maybe not a plan B, but somewhere further down the alphabet, because things are always going to go wrong for you. All right, we also have a lot of fishing in the park. We actually have quite a few sports fishing things going on. Anglers flock to Katmai because we have apparently quite excellent rainbow trout. You're not allowed to keep them, but they like to play with them, apparently. Now, my view on that is that mostly they just want a picture of them fishing with a bear in the background. But there are rules about that because it turns out bears like fish as well, and they are not averse to taking them from you. And then bear viewing, of course, which is what everybody's going for. And this year we had a spectacular year for a number of reasons. We had a ton of bears. So what you're looking at is me off duty watching 50 bears at the falls at one time, which is unprecedented. We have rangers who've been there for 20 years and they have never seen numbers like this. So, we are not the only ones who like bear viewing. Turns out the bears do as well. And I just had to include that because I like that bear. All right, so a huge portion of my job as a park ranger is to manage expectations. And part of that, I am quite possibly the least reassuring ranger at Katmai. Everybody gives mostly the same information in their own little way. And mine is to be very abrupt with people. So I tell people that there is nowhere in this park that is safe because it's full of bears. And people seem to think that that's not a thing, that like right next to the visitor center, you're totally safe and you don't have to pay attention. That is not true. And part of that is we tell people what to expect. We give them the rules and guidelines they're expected to follow. We remind them when they then don't follow them. And we use a lot of signage and try to make it so that they can't just walk around the signs that tell them to not go back there. So what you're looking at here, I keep forgetting I have a pointer, is a female with cubs. Now this female is notoriously aggressive. She doesn't like you near her cubs. A lot of them don't. And we have put up a sign that says, please don't go past here, there's bears there. And then we have to go past a sign to retrieve people who have gone closer for pictures. Like this. Oh my God. So, this is a young female with her first cub. She lost one of the two, which is unfortunate, but it also makes her a little bit more edgy because she is already nervous about how she's lost the one, and now she's only got one left. And things were not going well, and she was actually getting chased and harassed by visitors. We had to set up a cordon around her. She treed that cub and herself 40 feet up a tree. And we had to post rangers for a couple of hours to just keep people away until she felt comfortable coming down. And that could have been a really dangerous situation, not only for her and her cub, but also for the visitors, because a brown bear's defense is to attack. So most brown bear attacks are defensive aggression. So most of what we're trying to get people to do is not scare the bears. This is another poor life choice. So remember when I said that people like to fish? It's a really terrible idea to fish when there is a bear really close to you, because bears are very clever and they will figure out that if a fish on the line is an easy meal they don't have to work for, and they will start coming towards people in the river. And as you saw earlier, we have a lot of people who like to be in that river. And so this creates a terrible situation for both us and the bears, because when there's bear and human conflict, who loses? The bears. All right, so everybody that comes in, we're not actually going to watch this because it's 10 minutes and I have a lot to tell you. But everybody who comes in either has to watch this bear school video or have a ranger do it outside. And again, this is an instance where we have the same information but our own little styles. I like to trap people in an electric fence while I talk to them so they can't escape until I'm done. And I talk really fast, because if you talk really fast, they have to work to pay attention. And it seems to work out for me most of the time, although I have had bears run through my bear orientation, and that is very distracting. All right, so we're going to skip that. All right, so another part of our job is actually doing the sciencey side, which is great fun. This is bear monitoring, and we are dropped out into the back country to go camping for a week and watch bears. And it sounds lovely and glamorous until you realize that you are in a carry-in, carry-out situation, and that means everything. And also that you don't get to control the weather. So in this particular instance, it was freezing cold and raining the entire time, and you are hiking and crossing rivers about 5 miles each way, and then sitting for 8 hours in the rain, only to hike back out and not get a warm shower for a very long time. So it sounds glamorous, but it is a lot of work. But great fun. This is probably the only nice picture I have of that whole week, because it was rainy and windy and gross. But you get to see some pretty cool places and see some pretty cool things that a lot of other people don't get to, and you get a lot of information. But it's not just the bears that we're monitoring. Also, sometimes they creep up on you. It's also salmon. We do a lot of salmon surveys. And I would like you guys to get an idea of what that's like, so you know a little bit more about my job in case you're considering taking it. So this is the falls. These are the iconic falls that everybody goes to see. And one aspect of our salmon counts is that every half hour, for 1 whole minute, we have to watch the entire length of the falls and count how many salmon jump. And in case you're thinking that was less than a minute. Any of you guys have any idea how many fish just jumped? I'm telling you it was more than that. But that is what we do, and it's very difficult, especially if you have 40 other people on that platform all wanting to know which bear is that. All right, the other part of salmon counting. This is later on in the season. So when salmon first come in, our huge run at the beginning that everybody waits for is the sockeye run. And sockeye salmon, when they first come in, look all nice and pretty like they did before. And then they mature, sort of. It's more they start to lose everything because they're eating themselves from the inside out. They're just decaying while alive. They just look like this, sort of, except much less pretty. But this is a pretty average size for some of the salmon that come through. And this has about as many calories as, I believe, 5 cheeseburgers. So the bears have to go through quite a bit. And so what they'll do is the bigger bears that have the best fishing spots and having a great time catching them will get picky about what part of the salmon they're eating. If they're able to catch a lot of salmon, they're not going to fill up on those low-calorie portions. So they will grab them, they will peel them like a banana and eat the skin. They will eat the brains, and they will eat the eggs, and they will throw the rest away. And the other bears will catch it if they're not having as much luck fishing. But we are interested in what the salmon are doing to see how many we have and also where they are in their season. This year we had a really late salmon run, and it pushed everything back, and it confused the bears, and it confused the people, and it was a nightmare. But we have to look at a pool of salmon like this with all those swirling red colors and count those salmon to know how many are in a certain area, which they have a tendency to swim in and out of, which makes it even worse, and figure out what they're doing there, what part of the process they're in. Sometimes we have interruptions. It's very hard to count salmon in a pool when a bear then chases them out of that pool. All right, we also do spruce grouse surveys. And this is something that if you come to visit Katmai and you ever go on the valley tour, your ranger will ask you to help with. It's a very long drive. We have short attention spans, and extra eyes always help. So this is spruce grouse. They look like a very lost, very decorative chicken. And that's how I tell people to look for them, because if you've never seen a bird before, you may not know what you're looking for. Sometimes they're in trees. That is why they're called the spruce grouse. And they're actually quite pretty, but not very bright. So you can almost walk right up on them before you realize they're there, and they will not get out of your way. This, on the other hand, is a ptarmigan. And we also do surveys for those, but they inconveniently don't just hang out in the road where you're walking. So we have to go out and find them and count them in certain areas. This one was a little miffed that I was taking his photo. He didn't appreciate it. We do hare surveys, so we count those as well. They're a little bit faster, so you have to be a little bit quicker on the uptake to make sure you know what you're looking at. We do bald eagle surveys, which our natural resource management team mostly handles, because what they do is they go up in a plane and they do circles counting nests and birds. And if you've ever been in a plane that's doing circles, air sickness is a thing. They hate those. All right, we also do a wolf study. We've been doing some genetic research on our wolves, and if you're very lucky, you may see them. We do our bat studies. We've got acoustic boxes that we are listening to. And then if we ever find some dead ones, sometimes we try to send them out for studies to see what's harming our bats. But they also like to hang out in one of the areas that the interp rangers have to man a lot, so we just get friendly. We do a lot of plant identification. This is another ranger. You'll notice that's not me. But she's a good friend of mine, so I told her I was going to make her famous. And we do a lot of plant IDs. We do talk about foraging, which is why I was so excited about that earlier presentation. However, it's a national park, so what you're allowed to actually pick up and eat is very limited. So none of that stuff. All right, we also do necropsies and investigations if we find dead animals. So this is actually a bear that you're looking at, or pieces of a bear. And part of what we're looking at is not only how it died and what condition it was in when it died, but also sometimes who it was, and also looking out for things like poaching, because we don't want that to happen. A good indicator that something might have been poached is if the skull is missing, because there isn't a whole lot that's going to drag off a bear skull except a trophy hunter. We do archaeology as well. We have about 9,000 years of human history in just the Brooks Camp section of the park, let alone the other sections. And we have a lot of fossils that you can find pretty much everywhere, and they are great fun to look at. And most of my job as what's called an interp ranger is answering questions, and I got a lot of them. So, any idea what this bird is doing? Dust bath, that's right. Actually in volcanic ash. So they get their own special dust bath. Is the gross one. What's wrong with that bear?
Yeah, worms.
It does have worms. That's a tapeworm in a cub. We have a lot of that. But this is one of my favorite answers, or my favorite questions, because nobody's quite prepared for the answer. Any idea what that thing is? That is a short-tailed weasel. It will turn white in the winter and become an ermine. All right. Now, for any of you who do watch the cameras, identifying the bears is a big thing. Now, for the Park Service, the reason that we identify the bears is because we want to know who's coming back, how they're doing, what their behavior is, and knowing their life story really helps us out with that. But these are wild animals and not pets, so we try to give them numbers because that keeps them from being our sweet little bear pets. So, a lot of different things that you'll be looking for when you're identifying bears. Any ideas how I can tell this is a female, if I didn't know? She's got cubs, right? Not that bad, but yeah, everybody thinks they're being stupid when they say that, but it's true. So if you see cubs, probably a female with them, because the males don't. So, good indicator. Now, another thing you can look for is those are her cubs. Do you notice anything about them? Different colors. That's not always the case. It's just, you know, when you have kids, whether one's blonde and one's brunette, or they're both blonde, but if you have a bear that has different colored cubs, and later on you see a bear with different colored cubs, it might be the same bear. So that's a really good indicator. And it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but for real, that's how you start. And then another thing, particularly with this bear, anybody notice anything? Give you a hint. It's not a collar. That's a scar. So we don't tag or collar the bears. We do all of our identification by sight and behavior. So we watch the bears, see how they look, see how they're behaving, and we do look for things like scars. And she's got a really distinct one. So when you see this bear, you know it's her. And that scar is actually from a wolf snare that somebody put out and left out and didn't take care of, and she got in it and it nearly killed her. And this is one of the few times that the park staff was able to intervene, because usually when a bear gets injured, it's a wild bear, it's going to have to fend for itself, and that's just how it goes. You know, nature isn't always Disney, although Disney's pretty brutal with some of theirs. So this is a situation that the Park Service actually got to intervene. We got to intervene because, first of all, it was a human-inflicted injury, so we had to make it right. And second of all, we got a chance, essentially. It takes a lot of work. You have to make sure, in order to take a snare off a bear, you have to put that bear under, because it's not going to just sit there and let you do it. And if you're going to put a bear under, there's a lot of risks with that. First of all, you can't get close. It's not a simple shot. You have to dart them. And you have to dart them in a place where they are not going to then injure themselves or run off and get lost or let another bear come up and get them while they're down. There's a lot of things in there. And we're surrounded by water, so you don't want that darted bear running into the water and drowning. They're very heavy and hard to move, so it has to be like just the perfect opportunity. And they ended up actually darting her from a boat. I don't know if any of you have tried to stand and shoot from a boat at a moving target, but it's actually pretty amazing that they did it. So this is several years ago, but she's got a distinctive scar. So I'm going to have some more audience participation. I know I've been asking you a lot of questions, but I want you to kind of get an idea of how to identify bears. So any things that you notice between these bears? How would you tell one from the other?
Color.
Color, right? One is much darker, other's much lighter. Anything else? The shape of them? Yeah, so I should use my little pointer since I have it. Brown bears are known for these humps. Black bears don't really have them. But yeah, we've got sort of a flat bum here, much more rounded one there. Anything else? What about their ears? Anything about their ears? This ones are kind of flat. These ones are pointed much more up and sort of rounded. Yeah. So these are both adult male bears. Everybody's always surprised to find out that color doesn't mean sex of the bear. So we have 2 adult males, a little difference in age. So we have 89, and you'll meet his mother later. And we have 634, and I don't know his mom, so I can't tell you. All right, let's try again. Anything you notice? Color, fur length. Part of that is because these were taken at different times of the year. Sorry about that. But yeah, the fur length, some of them are shaggier than others. Yeah, butt scar. That is this one's most distinctive thing. Everybody sees that scar, they know exactly who this bear is. Anybody who watches the cam have any idea? Okay, good. That's 18-1. I am rather fond of that bear because even though he is an adult male, he is a very silly bear. He likes to play with other bears, particularly younger bears who will still play with him. And a lot of adult bears don't play. So this is not necessarily something that every bear does. It doesn't make him friendly, and he would still kill you if you tried to pet him. So don't play with him. And then we have 133. She's a subadult female. She is not fully grown. She is stunning, and her sister is about the same color now, which is quite nice. I like the very blonde ones. All right, how about these 2? Color, that's a huge one. Yeah, so one of them's got sort of this dorsal stripe going on. Anything else? Longer nose.
The snout is like darker on the right, like it's got a bigger patch of like brown.
Yeah. All right. Any guess, male or female? All right. These are both females. All right. These are both adult females. One of them is 435. She is one of the most famous bears if you watch the bear cams. And she's famous because, first of all, she's very easy to recognize, and second of all, she's been around forever. And the other one is my favorite bear. You're not supposed to have favorites, but I do, and that's her. You've seen her actually several times in the previous photos. She was the one with the monster cubs that kept surrounding me. All right, so I was talking about that color and how it's passed on and it's just genetic. It doesn't mean it's a different type of bear. It doesn't mean it's a female bear versus a male. So for this very distinctive looking bear with that toasted marshmallow color, these are her kids, different litters. And they share that same sort of silvery coloring. Now not all of them do, but hers very much look like her, very easy to identify. That really gorgeous caramel colored male that we saw earlier with the sort of flat ears and the flat butt, that's also one of hers. All right. The identifying bears is great in a lot of ways. It gives you an idea of which bears are coming back, how they're behaving, what's typical for an adult versus a young bear, how the bears close in with all the people around behave differently than the ones further out in the park that don't see people very much. But it also allows you to get a better understanding of bear behavior. And bear behavior is really important for rangers, first and foremost, because we walk around alone a lot. And so we come into contact with bears a lot. And if we learn to identify some of their signals and behaviors, we're a lot less likely to get ourselves into a bad situation. Have any of you seen that TikTok video from Katmai with this giant bear and he comes walking past this group of people and then turns around and runs away and he's just this massive bear? No? Really?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That came out this year, and ever since then, everybody who came to Katmai was asking me about it because they're all super excited about it. That's a very stressed out bear. If you watch the video again, you can hear him jaw popping and huffing. That is an unhappy bear noise, and those people were very lucky that he decided to leave. So if you learn bear behavior, you see things very differently. A lot of people see that and they get so excited that you had this close, amazing encounter with a bear. all I see is a very stressed out bear. All right, so knowing bear behavior is what lets me know that this cub is curious about me. So he was coming at me and being kind of a pest, as cubs are, because they're essentially toddlers with all the same tendencies. It doesn't have any ill intent towards me. It's just a cub who wants to see what he can get away with and whether he can push me around. The truth of the matter is that he can, because he's got mom backing me up and I'm afraid of mom. But I don't want him to know that, because then he'll start doing that to everybody. And part of my job as a ranger is to make it as safe as possible, remember nowhere's actually safe, for other people who may not have those same backgrounds of knowing bear behavior. So I have to not let this cub get away with anything with me, because then he'll do it with the visitors. This cub is totally relaxed. This is what we call a bear sploot. This bear does not care that I'm there at all, has no interest in me, is not on guard. This is a totally relaxed bear. This is a fearful bear. This cub is very nervous. With good reason. There's a lot of people up on the platform taking a lot of pictures. Some of them have a very bad habit of calling out to the bears to get them to look back for phenomenal shots. And also there was about 50 bears around, and all of them could kill this cub. So, very scared cub with good reason. This is a cub that's not quite sure yet. It's gone part way up a tree. Moms will tree their cubs if anything's coming around, and then mom will go on the defensive or attack. But it has only gone up a little ways. It's given itself a head start until it figures out if it has to be worried or not. And so those are all different types of bear behavior that you can tell from their body language. This is a personal space dispute. These are all adult male bears. One of them has gotten into a spot that the other one wants, so the other one is trying to take it away and is pushing him back into a third bear who is not pleased about the whole situation. So they are going to argue it out until somebody gets out of the way. This is fish stealing. And one of the most effective methods of fish stealing is you go up and you scream in somebody's face, and they scream back and drop the fish, you take it and run before they retaliate. It works very well. This is play fighting. Nothing serious going on here. They're just having fun. These are two subadults, so they're not fully grown yet, and they're just having a good time. This is not having a good time. And that's a really important distinction to make, because play fighting bears may get too close to you, may accidentally run over you, and that's not great for you. Angry bears may involve you, and you don't want that either. So either way, you want to give the bear space. This one, just leave. All right. So sometimes as rangers, we do what's called bear hazing. And that sounds really mean, because you've all heard the stories about like fraternities and things like that. It's not that kind of hazing. And this is basically annoying a bear until it decides to leave whatever thing it's doing that you don't want it to do, such as pulling out, float corks or chewing on buildings. And I wanted to give you an idea of how low-key we try to keep this, because we want to use the least amount of annoyance that we have to, because we don't want that bear to decide to take us out. So we're more trying to be like mosquitoes at a picnic. You're not really upset about them, but they're annoying enough that you want to leave.
Hey.
Also watch that cub, because she's stupid. I love it. So you can see that bear is not particularly concerned about that ranger. They're not afraid of him. They're just leaving because he's going to be annoying at them until they do. But they're not in a huge hurry. We don't want them running off and running people over. All right. Some of the things we try to prevent with bear hazing, we do it as little as possible because this is their home. But we do try to avoid property damage. This mom and cubs getting a little testy with that vehicle. We did have a cub figure out how to open door handles. It takes him about 6 seconds to get into a car. More bears around the buildings. You'll see that one's going into a culvert that it does not fit in. And they can do quite a bit of damage. And we also want to manage those bear-human interactions. Essentially what we're going for and what we're trying to get you guys to do when you visit the park is be to a bear like a squirrel is to us. If you've never seen a squirrel before, and the first time you see it, it starts screaming at you, you're going to be like, what is that thing? And you might be a little nervous because you're not sure if it's going to come after you, or if you can eat it, if you're that type of person. But the 100th time you walk past a squirrel and it starts screaming at you, and nothing has happened to you, and you also haven't gotten anything fun from that squirrel, you're probably just going to ignore it, right? That's what we're hoping for from the bears. We don't want them to be scared of us, because then they'll go on the defensive, but we also don't want them to associate us with anything fun or tasty, because then they'll start approaching us, and we will lose that fight. So we do a lot of managing of those human-bear interactions to try and keep it to a neutral level and be squirrels. And part of it is because we share a lot of space. That picture of the plane that you saw earlier was on this beach, and the bears like to nap there. And so we are frequently telling people, you have to move off the beach because there are bears. This bear in particular, I was walking on the shore of a river and met up with this bear. And this bear is notorious for charging without provocation. And that's okay, because she's a bear doing bear things, but for me as a person at the receiving end of that, I want to avoid that as much as possible. So even though we tell you, give the bear space, giving them more space than we tell you is often a good idea, because you probably don't know who this bear is. All right, but it's not just that. In addition to dealing with bears, we also do what's called pocket programs or interpretive talks. Usually they're things trying to teach you. But our pocket programs at Katmai are little things that we as rangers are obsessed about. And we each have different things that we're super into and we would love to tell you about. And I was walking with a group of people, they were asking me all about birds, and I told them, you know what, this other ranger is the bird guy, you definitely want to talk to him because he can identify them by sound, and that's not me. And they said, oh cool, what bird is that sound? But I knew it because it was a squirrel. So this is a merganser. I don't know if you have those here, but we have those on the East Coast as well, and sometimes I forget to be excited about them. But, anyone know what mergansers eat? Fish. Fish? Anything else? They eat lampreys, which is a type of fish, to be fair, but they're really creepy, like nightmare-looking fish. And I am obsessed with them. And when I found out that that's what the mergansers were eating, that is my pocket program. And if you ever catch me outside of this, I am so happy to tell you more than you ever wanted to know about lampreys. And I was so obsessed with them that I even made a little flip book for people if I wasn't there to talk to you about lampreys. They look creepy, not gonna lie, they're terrifying. All right, we also have lynx, and I actually did a chat online earlier this year that at least one person saw, and it was about the lynx and snowshoe hare. And they're there, but they're hard to spot because they blend in and they're very quiet. You have a lot of bobcats here. We do not have those in Alaska. Their territory doesn't overlap that much. So towards the end of the season, as the rangers start to leave, the bears start to slow down. They're going into what's called hyperphagia, which means they eat, never feel full, and then they nap, and then they eat some more. But they're getting ready for hibernation. They're starting to go a little brain dead, kind of like I am this morning. I apologize. And sometimes you get amazing shots like this, which is a bear that was surprised by me as I was surprised by him, and neither of us quite knew what to do because this was about 7 in the morning. And you just get to walk around the park and see amazing things. Now, a couple things about Katmai. Everybody knows about the bears. There's lots on that. If you're into bear cams, you can watch them all day long to your heart's content, as long as the sun is shining, because they're solar powered. Which is not ideal because we get a ton of rain in Katmai. But bear watching is a huge thing there, but it's not the only thing. Like I said, there's hiking, there's camping, there's fishing. And actually the reason that Katmai became a park in the first place was because of that volcanic eruption that I told you about earlier. It was the largest eruption of the 20th century, happened in 1912, and I'm willing to bet there's not very many of you who could tell me which one it was. No? Nova Erupta. And the reason nobody knows is because you've all heard of Pompeii and Vesuvius and that one? Yep, way bigger than that one. Have you heard of Krakatoa? Killed 40,000 people. Novarupta dwarfed that one. Guess how many people Novarupta killed in 1912? 0. Not a single person died. Which is pretty amazing, actually. But it was so huge that the ash cloud reached all the way from Alaska to Seattle and actually dissolved clothes hanging on the line. It lowered the global, or the northern hemisphere temperature globally by about 2 degrees for an entire year. It was a huge eruption. Nobody here knows about it. But it's okay, nobody back where I'm from knows about it either. All right. Everybody remember what I said this was called? It's a sploot. This is a bear sploot. Most of what's left here is just cute pictures that I wanted to show you while you guys ask me questions. This is a cub who is tired of mom fishing, but mom's very busy and has things to do. So, from here on out, there's not a lot for me to tell you except to answer your questions. All right? Anybody got questions for me? I got one.
Well, you reference the techniques, but besides the clapping and what are some of the stuff that you use to?
So there's a lot of different things, and depending on which ranger is doing it, we have a team that mostly does it. I sometimes get to help out. A lot of it is the lowest we can do, just because we don't want to get into a real face-off with a bear because they will win, and if they figure that out, we're kind of in trouble. So sometimes we'll scuff our feet at them, which is just kind of annoying. We'll throw rocks up on a roof, which makes a lot of noise. We'll shake a plastic bag, they don't like that very much. We'll clap. Sometimes we'll just holler at them like they're being a naughty dog. As low as we can get. Sometimes they do react. That one that was sitting on the beach just hanging out in the sunshine, 901, remember her? Yeah, she likes to ground swat at some of our rangers. She does not take very kindly to being told she can't go places. We do have some moms who will charge, and so mostly what we do with them is follow along behind and say, "There's a bear coming your way, get out of the way," which tends to work well, unless they have a camera, and then they sometimes forget to get out of the way because there's a great picture coming. So we try to keep it as low-key as possible and do it as little as possible because it's the same idea with the squirrel. The more you get used to something, the less you'll react to it. So if a bear gets clapped at every day, all day, it's going to start ignoring that, and it's not going to work anymore, and we're going to have to up the ante, which is not convenient for us, because then we have to come up with new and more annoying ways to get the bears to move. So we try to do it as little as possible and as low-key as possible. Yep?
I'm curious, do you stay then all summer? Do you have a break that you get to go somewhere else? How does your...
We are dropped off. And unless we're going somewhere in the back country, we are there. And that's it. So, yeah, you're in there, and there's bears every time you leave your house, so you always have to be paying attention. And you're pretty isolated because no cell phone service, there's no Wi-Fi. We have a work telephone that you can use after hours to call home and let them know you're not dead, but it is a satellite phone, so sometimes it doesn't work. So you are pretty isolated, and not all rangers are really into that. So you have a certain type of weirdo who likes to go to places like this.
You're there year-round?
No, we're there for 6 months. After that, the park is still technically open, so you can go there. But as I said, you have to fly your boat in, and that becomes very difficult and not very cost-effective for the people who fly those planes. And so it becomes very difficult to get there anyways, and all the bears are gone. So there's not a whole lot there to see in the winter.
Does it get a lot of snow in the winter?
A fair amount. It is southern Alaska, so it's not as much as it would be way up north, but a fair amount. Yep?
How many fatalities a year are there, and what do you recommend people, when they do come into contact with the bear, what actions do you recommend they take?
So I don't know over the whole of Alaska how many fatalities there are due to brown bears. In the park, we have quite a few of what we call bear contacts, which is anything from a bear running someone over, or someone trying to pet a bear, which is a terrible life choice, let me tell you, don't do it. But people do because they think it's a park, so these must be tame, friendly bears. They are not. So anything as minor as like a bear brushes up against you as it runs past to a full-on attack we call a contact. And you'll usually see a press release. We really try to keep it from getting that far. So as soon as you get into the park, the first thing you have to do before you're allowed to go anywhere else, we catch them right off the planes and the boats, all the tour guides know they have to drop them off at the visitor center, is we give you a 10-minute talk on, you're gonna see bears, here's how you behave. And hopefully that is enough to discourage those contacts. But not always avoidable. We did have an attack in the park this year. The press release went out. A week later, I had a woman in the park try to pet a bear because nobody thinks it's going to happen to them. So, but no fatalities this year in our park. Yay! So, this is my favorite bear again. Just wanted to show her off because she's pretty. Yep.
He was mentioning the attacks and your ranger staff. What is their involvement with? Citations? Are they following these idiots around?
So we have different divisions. We have like a law enforcement division. We have the rest of us, essentially. We give you the directions. If we see bad behavior, we try to correct it before it gets to that point. And if you're still terrible, then yeah, we try to give you a citation so that you learn financially before you learn physically what's wrong with messing with bears. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because it is a like 6,000 square mile park, and I think in Brooks Camp this year we had about 20 rangers, and we have thousands of visitors. So there's only so much we can catch, and we don't escort anybody through the park. And that's sometimes a really difficult thing to get across to people, because they come in, you say, you're gonna see bears, here's how to behave. Sometimes a bear runs through right there, and you're like, back up everybody. And then you go, okay, good luck, have fun, you're on your own now. And that can be really difficult for people. It's kind of a bit of a shock when they come in and realize they're gonna have to walk alone with bears around. Mm-hmm.
With a lot of your monitoring, when you see health issues with the bears going through the park, what kind of influence do you guys have over that? Can you even?
To be honest, not much. They're wild animals and we kind of leave them to being wild. If we get a report of an injured bear in an area where people are going to be, we do try to minimize the contact that they might have, because injured bears are cranky bears and they don't appreciate being crept up on. So usually what we'll do is we'll try to find the bear, see what's wrong with it, and then keep everybody else away from that bear. If it has died, sometimes what we'll do is go and try to retrieve the body so we can see why it died, how it died. And if it's in an area that people have a tendency to walk through, sometimes we'll move it, and that way another bear won't take possession of that free meal and get really defensive about it.
Since they're all so close together, does like diseases, pests, or anything like that happen often, or I don't know.
I can't tell you much about that. I don't really know. But I have just been informed I have time for one more question. So, yep.
What do you do the other 6 months of the year?
Oh, God, that one. I hate that question. Everybody hates that question because I don't know. Most of the rangers that you're going to meet if you go to national parks are seasonal, and we all hate that question because nobody knows. You're at the park for 6 months of the year, and then you go somewhere else, and it depends on which opportunities present themselves. I barely know where I am right now, so I don't know. All right, so that's about it for me. Thank you very much. I did forget one thing. So for those of you who are interested in learning more, I did have these little things made up so that none of you would have to take notes, since this was not an informative lecture. It gives you the website for Katmai National Park, for rec.gov if you want to plan your camping trip, and also for explore.org, where you can watch the cameras and watch some of our talks online so you can see people other than me talk about bears.